further ado, my name is Brad Klopfenstein. I am the president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us on this edition of Chamber Chat. This week, we are honored to have from Indiana's 3rd Congressional District, Jim Banks from Columbia City, Indiana, is coming to us live from Fort Wayne. His office is there. So, Congressman Banks, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, Brad, good to be with you.
Well, thank you very much. Glad you're here. Most people don't know it, but as a congressman, you do represent the entire state of Indiana, even though you are elected by districts. So you were one of our 9. So thank you very much for showing some love to Lawrence today.
Yeah, happy to do it and very proud to represent our state in Washington, D.C. I'm at the end of my 2nd term, Brad. Time flies, but it's a privilege to serve with the rest of the Indiana delegation. I happen to think that we get a lot done. We're a pretty effective and productive delegation when you compare us to so many other delegations from around the country. So I'm very proud to serve with the rest of our crew.
Cool. So just give us a little bit of an update. What all has been going on in D.C.? What are you guys working on? Any helpful hints on how to get through this pandemic?
Well, that's a loaded question, Brad, because we're not really working on much at all, and that's really frustrating to me. We've been back in our districts, which is great during all this, but so many of us are begging Speaker Pelosi to call us back to work. There's so much to do. There's so much to get done. And until this Friday, there's been no signs of Congress getting back to work. But on Friday, we're going to vote on a bill that's really a massive, over $3 trillion a spending bill that Speaker Pelosi is putting on the floor. That's sort of it's a wish list of everything Democrats want to fund to placate sort of base issues for the Democrat Party. I don't want to get too partisan on this call, but it's important to note that this is this bill is for show for Speaker Pelosi. She knows that when it goes to the Senate, it's dead on arrival, and President Trump will never sign it. But this $3 trillion bill, what it does is it gives bailouts to blue states on the backs of states like Indiana. So we would be bailing out Illinois for years of mismanagement and deficit spending in Illinois. Hoosier taxpayers would be helping to fund a $3 trillion bill that would bail out states who've mismanaged their budget. Brad, I always appreciate it and always got a kick out of Mitch Daniels when he was governor. He always said that being next door to Illinois is like living next door to the Simpsons.
I don't remember that line.
Say that. So he would talk. What he meant by that is they make us look really good, right? And Indiana has a lot of good reason to look good. We've had 3 governors in a row, Daniels, Pence, and Holcomb, and legislatures who have worked really hard to pass balanced budgets and take what we inherited, which was a budget deficit, turn that into a budget surplus and create a rainy day fund for a time such as this. And other states, though, you've seen exactly the opposite. Illinois is a case study in reckless spending, mismanagement, deficits. And this bill that Pelosi's putting on the floor on Friday would bail out their bad leadership on the backs of taxpayers in Indiana. I think that's absolutely shameful, and it's one of the many reasons I'm going to vote against this bill on Friday. But prior to that, we've passed a few important bills in Congress to help small businesses in Indiana. The PPP program has been a lifeline to so many small businesses in Northeast Indiana and in Lawrence and all over the state. A lot of other things that we've done so far has helped so many people. At this point, we need to take a step back and let those programs work and support our governors like Governor Holcomb in their efforts to get workers back to work. That's the ultimate effort to stimulate the economy, is to get workers back to work, get the economy working again. If we do that, I have a lot of optimism that we can get America back on its feet and get things back to something that resembles what the economy looked like before the pandemic. And I'm hopeful today as much as ever that we'll be able to do that.
So that brings up a question. What's your feel on, are we being too cautious on opening things back up, not cautious enough? I know that we're going to have the benefit of hindsight on a true answer to that question, but what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, what I appreciate about President Trump is that he's really allowed the states to govern their own approach. So you have 50 different states taking 50 different approaches to shutting down and reopening their states' economies. And instead of the federal government doing a blanket order, which I think that would have been a terrible approach, he allowed Governor Holcomb and other governors to take their own approach. Now, I'm one who believes that it's long past time to get our state back to work, and I'm glad that Governor Holcomb laid out a phased approach and plan to do that. I mean, maybe as you can tell, I got a haircut on Monday. So we had our hair salons and barbershops open up on Monday. It felt really good to get a haircut. Restaurants are open at 50% capacity this week. I went and had a breakfast at my favorite Fort Wayne diner this morning. I'm taking my wife out to eat at one of our favorite restaurants tonight. And as I get out and go to restaurants and get out and go back to work in our office here in Fort Wayne, I'm seeing more people out and about. They're optimistic. And what I appreciate about Hoosiers, Brad, is we don't like to be told what to do, but we want to, at the same time we want to do the right thing, right? I mean that's what I believe, that the approach that Governor Holcomb has laid out, and letting Hoosiers go back to work, adopt the guidance from CDC and public health officials about how to keep ourselves safe and those around us. We're going to do the right thing if you allow us to do it. And that's the approach that I hope other states will look to Indiana as a roadmap or a guide to how they can reopen as well. Unfortunately, I don't know if you've seen, the governor of Kentucky has been beaten up on Governor Holcomb, saying that he's opening up too fast, he's reckless, he's irresponsible. So you have other governors who are sort of shaming our governor for his approach. That's unfortunate and too bad, but I really think Governor Holcomb has the right approach here and laying out a way that we can get our state back to work.
Yeah, well, and my fear is that if this goes on too much longer, people will start doing their own thing anyhow. And then I almost think that makes it worse, because nobody's going to follow any directives in the future. So you've got to have some sort of a balance there. But I know I'm hearing from a lot of people that they're getting stir crazy and are also tired of not making money. So, and I think that's going to create some tax revenue issues, both locally at the state and then even federally, although the Fed seem to just be printing money.
Agreed. And that we're going to see this play out for many months to come as you see tax revenue decline substantially due to this period of time. We're going to see that in the future. And there are going to be challenges and issues that we have to address in the future. That's why Congress needs to come back to work and look at ways that we can support states in this effort to get back to work, support our small businesses. All your members, by the way, Brad, they're the lifeline of our economy, the backbone of our economy. Over 95% of businesses in Indiana are small businesses, and in Lawrence, those are your members. Congress needs to do our part, and PPP was an example of it. We need to do whatever we can to support small businesses getting back to work, and that's what I hope to hear from some of your members today about ways that we can do that and support those efforts. This bill that Speaker Pelosi is putting on the table, it's putting on the floor for us to vote on Friday, doesn't do anything to help small businesses get back to work, to help America get through the coronavirus. It is a literal wish list of liberal ideas and spending to placate their base, rather than do what we're supposed to be doing, which is to support America's economy and get us through a very tough time.
That sounds a little bit like the Farm Bill. So last question before I open it up to those in attendance. At what point does that bill not pass? Or do you get the feeling that maybe you're at that point?
Well, it's going to pass the House because what Speaker Pelosi did was by the way, not a single Republican had any input into the bill that we're voting on Friday. It was an open invitation for Democrats in the Democrat conference to come to Speaker Pelosi and say, we want this, we want that. I mean, it's got everything from cash to illegal immigrants to funding for Planned Parenthood. Excuse us as we have another Skype call coming through. I'm not sure who that would be, but so it's sort of a bailouts for blue states. It would eliminate the cap on state and local tax deductions. This is a really important subject because when we had the historic tax cut bill in 2017, we capped the SALT deduction at $10,000. This doesn't apply to in Indiana. We subsidize taxpayers in states like California and New York because they write off their state and local taxes, which incentivizes local governments in the states like New York to ratchet up their taxes when their wealthy taxpayers can write it off. So that was an example of something that we did in Congress to cut taxes. And this bill would reward those states once again for having higher tax rates, and would give bailouts to blue states that have budget deficits to begin with that don't have anything to do with the coronavirus or the pandemic that we're dealing with today.
Okay. Let's open it up to questions from those that are assembled here, if we have any. Everyone should be unmuted, hopefully. So if anybody wants to jump in. If not, I will ask you a question about one of your colleagues, Justin Amash.
Yeah, Justin's a friend, and we've served together for going on two terms. He's sadly decided to leave the Republican Party. Now he's joined the Libertarian Party. I respect his decision to do that. We disagree on a lot of issues and on a lot of tactics as well. So now he's running for president against President Trump, which I fully support President Trump. So to me, that's a fool's errand. I'm not sure what he's gaining from that, but I sincerely wish him well, Brad.
Trust me, I tilted at windmills long enough myself. I get where you're coming from. Anyone else? Ross, you always have a good question.
I don't know about back at it. Thank you for joining us, Congressman. In that bill, and I agree with your take and what I read on WIBC overall on that bill, but it did include a component for road and bridge infrastructure funding, and the highway bill, I think the authorization expires at the end of the fiscal year. So how do you see that issue as far as reauthorizing the highway bill and properly taking care of the nation's infrastructure and the money from the feds that comes down to the local level? What's your position on that? And should that be a part of COVID bills or dealt with separately?
Well, it's a great question. I'm glad you brought up infrastructure. I've had conversations with even the Indiana Trucking Association today about infrastructure and highway bill related issues. And this is important. Indiana is the crossroads of America, the logistics capital that we are. So infrastructure is important. The bill that's on the floor on Friday is 1,400 pages long, and this is like a very small part of it. And no doubt there are parts of this $3 trillion bill that Pelosi's putting on the floor that there are good components, but they're far outweighed by massive wasteful spending in a lot of other areas. So I'm open to infrastructure being one plank of a COVID-19 or coronavirus aid package in the future. My hope is that moving forward, as we've already added trillions of dollars to our national debt, that we'll look for ways to offset any future spending by cutting spending in other places. And I've been, as a conservative, been looking for ways to do that. But I'm entirely open to infrastructure being a part of a future package, and want to be a part of coming up with a solution to do that.
Thank you.
So other questions for the congressman while we have him here with us?
Brad?
Yes.
I'd like to ask, do you think there's going to be any more guidance on the forgiveness of the PPP loans, especially for LLCs? The way they had us calculate that versus the way they're telling us they're going to forgive it is going to leave every LLC with some repayment to make. Which is a little disheartening. So I'm just curious if we think we're going to get any more guidance on that.
Yes, there will be a lot more guidance on PPP. I see this as an evolving situation because there are so many who are just like you. They're in the same boat. there's no way that Congress in good conscience can't provide more guidance to LLCs and small businesses on the forgiveness of the loan. That was the intent of the way the program was created. There have been some bumps in the road, but my office will work with Brad, or we'll reach out to Congresswoman Susan Brooks and work with her office to in any way that we can assist you as you look for that guidance in the future. But I would count on it. Anything that passes in the future, and the administration is working on further guidance for PPP loans as well. But I can guarantee that that it's evolving. You're going to see more guidance, and just hang in there. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our staff answers questions about PPP nonstop all day long. We've heard every question under the sun, and we might be able to provide you some insight, or call Congresswoman Susan Brooks' office as well if you haven't done that already.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I see we have an Arizonian. That is.
I had a quick question, and sorry if I missed this, got in a little bit late. I was wondering about the unemployment, the $600 a week thing. If I know they were talking about renewing that or letting it just sunset. I guess my concern, being from Indiana, where the cost of living is a lot less, a lot of employees in this area are making more money staying at home and coming to work, and it's starting to have an effect on getting people to come back to work, even though there's work available. So I didn't know if you could comment on that, or what your thoughts, or what the GOP strategy is on that $600 a month thing.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. We have to incentivize workers to go back to work, not incentivize them to stay home. And that was a problem with the stimulus, the unemployment component of the first stimulus bill. There was an amendment, and this bill came out of the Senate. There was an amendment in the Senate to take the $600 out, the $600 additional to the unemployment, and that amendment failed on a party line vote. Ben Sass, the Republican, introduced it. All the Republicans voted for the amendment to take the $600 out. All the Democrats voted to keep it in, and there weren't enough votes to take it out, so it stayed in the Senate version. Then it came to the House, and there was no mechanism to amend it further, and it is what it is. It passed. The good part about it is that it's only temporary. I mean, it only lasts for, I'm looking at my staff to know do we know what the end date is on the $600?
The end of July. It's supposed to be the end of July.
July. So it's only temporary. It's going to run out. And when it does run out, then the incentive will be there for those workers to come back to work. So, but you hit the nail on the head of why this is, why it was unfortunate that it was included. Many of us did what we could to strip it out, but the temporary nature of it, I think, in the end, will solve the problem that you're describing.
Other questions from those that are here? So I know, just for me to, I guess, piling on a little bit, I've got a niece down in Evansville who was working at an ice cream shop, and she was making $200 a week. Well, the ice cream shop shut down. She went to making $120 as her base on unemployment, but then she got the $600. Heck, she's never made this much money. So yeah, she got triple her salary.
Yeah, we have to be careful about policies like that. I mean, for your member that just spoke a little bit ago, I mean, we want Hoosiers to go back to work. We want to incentivize them to go back to work. Our economy overall will only build back up and grow if we can incentivize that to happen. And but as it runs out in July, that will hopefully solve the overarching issue. I see that we have a constituent, and Damien online. It's great to see you.
I am, and I'm a part-time Arizonan and a resident of Huntington, Indiana, as you probably know. Hey, about that $600 thing, it's nice to say that it's going to be temporary and that it goes away at the end of July. I just had a small business symposium like this with a bunch of my clients yesterday, and 3 of them have the real issue of not being able to hire, or they had someone that is opting to try and get fired or quit so they can catch that. Because, you and I might say, okay, July 31st is pretty near term. To the person that has been a more $35,000 type employee per year, hell, they don't think about that. They think July 31st, that's months away. So there's no chance that'll get repealed or changed, right? I mean, it's not like it's you think it's fixed until July 31st period?
Yeah. The way that it passed, it was part of the overall stimulus package. It expired it's already funded. It expires on July 31st. So there's no way to take that money back away. And there was as I described, there was a legislative attempt to amend that out of the bill, and that failed on a party line vote, unfortunately. So at the end of the day, President Trump was left with, do I sign it and pass especially the PPP part of it, which was so important to small businesses, the other components of the bill that were important. I think the president, most Republicans I talked to understand that the $600 was a mistake. Not a mistake. It was intended to be there by the Democrats who wrote that, who supported that into the bill. But it runs out at the end of July. I understand exactly the point that you're making, and I wish that wasn't the case, because we want employees to come back to work. We want the economy to be working again, and it's not going to work again if people are making more money to stay at home than if they are when they're working.
Okay, so it definitely is in through July. Now, I came in late. I apologize. I was on another call. The situation that Nancy Pelosi proposed, where it now goes until January, has no chance of happening, probably, right?
I've learned the hard way not to make too many predictions in Washington, but what I can tell you is the massive $3 trillion bill that we're voting on Friday will probably pass the House, but it's dead on arrival in the Senate. So then the president will never sign his name to this $3 trillion bill. So what we come up with in the future, Mitch McConnell, the leader in the Senate, has said, we're not going to pass more massive spending bills. He's adamant about taking our time and allow what we've done already to work as states get their states back to work, their workers back to work, like we are in Indiana. That's the ultimate stimulus for our economy. So Mitch McConnell is adamant about not passing more bills. Speaker Pelosi controls the House, and she can pass whatever she wants in the House, like this $3 trillion bill that would extend the unemployment, as you mentioned, but it has no chance of passing in the Senate or the president signing it in its current form. So I'm fairly optimistic that won't be the case.
All right. Congressman, we did have another question from one of the people that's tuned in. They were wanting to know, any idea how long the PPP funds are going to last before that runs out on this round?
There's already discussions about funding more PPP. I mean, there's some, I don't know, my staff here in the district office that covers the PPP program. I mean, I think we've well exhausted the second round of it. And there's some talk about adding even more to it. And I'm of the mindset at this point, Brad, that we've done so much, we've spent so much, and now as states are opening up and getting back to work, before we pass another additional funding bill for more PPP, we need to take as I said, take a step back and wait and watch how the economy reacts to the reopening before we pass anything else. And I think that's what Mitch McConnell is saying as well when I hear him talk about the designs for more legislation in the Senate to sit back and wait, oppose these massive efforts by House Democrats to seize the moment and pass their laundry list of special interest items that they're putting on the floor, like the bill on Friday. And fortunately, the Senate is in responsible Republican hands that will oppose those efforts, like this bill on Friday. But it's time to kind of take a step back and allow the states to do their part and get their local economies back on track.
All right. Well, I know that you've got a hard deadline to get off this call here coming up. So we'll wrap this up a little earlier than we might otherwise do so. Congressman, I wanted to thank you very much for coming on with us and speaking to those of us in Lawrence and spread out around the world as well. Is there anything, this is my last question, anything you are looking forward to doing now that you could not do in the last 2 months?
Just getting out. It's great to be able to go to a restaurant, sit down, have a cup of coffee, maybe go go somewhere tonight and grab a beer. It makes all of us more optimistic as the weather is getting a little bit warmer, to be able to go out and interact with other people. And that's something that I've missed so much. I'm looking forward to being able to do more and more in the future.
Fantastic. Well, he is Congressman Jim Banks from Indiana's 3rd Congressional District in Northeast Indiana. He's coming to us live from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's a resident of Columbia City. Congressman Jim Banks, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
For
Brad.
those of you in Lawrence, keep in mind this evening we have our first weekly Greater Lawrence Chamber Cruise-In Car Show that's happening at Fort Harrison. That's from 5 to 8, and that'll be every Wednesday through the summer. We've got a golf outing coming up on September 8th. Sign-ups are available for that. So slowly but surely we're getting back to normal and getting some events scheduled. So thank you all very much for joining us. We're working on 2 or 3 people for next week, and hopefully I will have our guests booked throughout for the rest of May here by the end of tomorrow. So you all take care, and we'll see you tonight or next Wednesday.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
Thanks.